Praise the Lord, everyone. Today let us learn about why Satan tempts a believer. The Bible teaches that Satan is a powerful spiritual being who seeks to destroy and deceive people. One of the ways that Satan works is by tempting people to sin and turn away from God. In the case of spiritual believers, Satan may be especially interested in tempting them because they pose a threat to his kingdom. Spiritual believers are often more aware of Satan's tactics and more committed to living a godly life, which makes them a target for his attacks. In the book of Job, Satan is depicted as tempting Job, a man who is described as blameless and upright. Satan suggests to God that Job only serves him because of the blessings he receives, and challenges God to allow him to test Job's faith. Satan then proceeds to afflict Job with various trials and afflictions, including the loss of his property, children, and health. Despite this, Job remains faithful to God. This story illustrates how Satan can target even the most spiritual and righteous individuals in order to try and lead them astray. However, it also shows us that with God's help, we can resist temptation and remain faithful in the face of trials. In 1 Peter chapter 5, 8-9, we are warned to be vigilant and sober-minded, because your adversary the devil prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Resist him, firm in your faith, knowing that the same kinds of suffering are being experienced by your brotherhood throughout the world. This passage reminds us that Satan is always on the prowl, seeking to lead people away from God. But by staying alert and firm in our faith, we can resist his temptations and remain faithful to God. Let us know, what benefits Satan get on tempting a believer? There are several benefits that Satan may gain from tempting a believer. 1. To discredit the believer's witness. When a believer succumbs to temptation and falls into sin, it can damage their credibility as a witness for Christ. Satan knows that if he can get a believer to fall, he can undermine their effectiveness in sharing the gospel with others. 2. To disrupt fellowship with God. Temptation can lead to sin, and sin can damage our fellowship with God. Satan knows that if he can get a believer to sin, he can disrupt their relationship with God and hinder their spiritual growth. 3. To create division in the church. When believers sin, it can create division and conflict within the church. Satan knows that if he can get believers to turn on each other and cause division, he can weaken the church's impact and effectiveness. 4. To bring shame and guilt. When believers sin, it can bring feelings of shame and guilt. Satan knows that if he can get a believer to feel defeated and hopeless, he can discourage them and weaken their faith. Overall, Satan's ultimate goal is to lead people away from God and to keep them from experiencing the joy and peace that comes from a relationship with him. He uses temptation as a tool to achieve this goal, and believers must be aware of his tactics and rely on God's strength to resist temptation. May God bless you.